Hey, Luke here with CatsandCarp.com, and I'm here in Cherry Lakes in the United Kingdom, and I'm catching carp, and I'm not just catching any old carp, I'm catching tricky carp, carp that are hard to catch. This is a lake that's known for not being a pushover. Its carp don't give themselves up easily, and it's been a frustrating few sessions. I've been watching carp swimming all over in front of me. I can watch them rising and swimming with their backs out of the water, and they're not hitting anything. Now, most carp fishermen fish bottom baits. What it is, you throw about a bunch of bait and lead, and you sit your rig on the bottom of the lake or river, and you catch fish as they're eating food off the bottom. However, if anyone who's been around carp knows that often carp don't eat off the bottom. There's many times you'll be sitting in a lake or a pond, especially on a hot summer day, in the middle of the day, and you just watch those carp swim up and down right under the surface of the water, right at the top, and they're not on the bottom. They can't see what's on the bottom. They're not feeding on the bottom. So if your bait's on the bottom of the lake, you're sorry out of luck. So when you've got those fish that you can see them and they're just not eating, and you want to know what to do, a really great option is Zig Rigs. Now, what Zig Rigs are is they're kind of like the opposite of a bobber, okay? So when you throw out a bobber, you have a bait dangling underneath the bobber. A Zig Rig, you throw out a lead and you have a bait floating above the lead. So what you do is you take a bait or a lure that floats and you attach it to a lead and you cast it out there, and the lead anchors it in one place so it won't drift all over the lake, but it lets that bait suspend up off the bottom, and you want to put that bait right at mouth level for a carp, and they just come up. And it's a great bait in the wintertime when the fish are lethargic. It's a great bait in the heat of the day when the fish aren't really doing much and they're kind of they're not really feeding aggressively. It's a great bait whenever you can see fish and they're not on the bottom, they're not feeding on the bottom. So the key to a Zig Rig is you got to make sure you get your bait at the right depth. You want to find out what depth the fish are, how many feet above the water they are. That's where you've got to put your rig. So in order to do that, there's a couple things you can do. If you know the fish are at the surface, then all you need to do is figure out how deep the water is, and then just set your rig slightly beneath the surface. Okay, so it's just suspended right under there. You can figure out how deep the water is using a lot of different methods. You can use a bait boat with a fish finder to figure out how deep a given spot is, and then cast your Zig Rig right on top of that spot. Or you can use a marker float to find out how deep the water is. And I've got both of those. I've got a bait boat and I've got a marker float. Now, if you don't know what a marker float is, check out this little video I have on a do-it-yourself marker float. Okay, you can buy expensive professional carp fishing marker floats designed to help you measure the depth of water while bank fishing, or you can build your own. They're pretty simple to make. But the purpose of a marker float, it does a couple things. It allows you to figure out what's on the bottom, whether it's silt, weeds, gravel, whatever, and it allows you to figure out exactly how deep the water is. And another option is this little fluorescent flag acts as a target. So once you find a spot, you can use this as a target to cast to. So a marker float's a really great little technique if you're really serious about bank fishing and you want to catch more fish, you want to understand what's out there in front of you. Using a marker float is great, and all you need is a rod and a reel and a lead and something that floats you can see from the bank, and you can make your own marker float. Now, Zig Rigs come in all different shapes and sizes. Pretty much anything that floats that carp want to put in their mouth can be used as a Zig Rig. Now, the most classic Zig Rig at all is just a piece of black foam. That's it. It doesn't really look like anything. It's not shaped like anything. It's just a piece of black foam, and there you go. Some of the Zig Rigs you can buy look like little floating bugs, like little water boatmen, grasshoppers, all sorts of different larvae, or just generic little bug-looking things. You can use a pop-up boilie as a Zig Rig. You can use all sorts of fluorescent foams. Really doesn't matter. Some people like to spike scents, dip them in powerful like carp attracting scents, Other people don't. I haven't. I just use it straight up as is out of the package. Now the key is you got to make sure your Zig Rig floats. Whatever you use as the buoyant part of the lure, the foam or whatever, the pop-up bait, it has to be buoyant enough to elevate and float that hook and all the line underneath it. So it's important to get buoyant monofilament. You don't want to use fluorocarbon, and you don't want to use braid, because those can be, the braid soaks up water and will sink eventually, and fluorocarbon sinks. So do not use those two lines as your leader for a Zig Rig. You can buy a specific Zig Rig leader that floats. That works pretty good, or just get low diameter monofilament if you don't have Zig Rig line. But test your rig out close to shore and make sure it floats before you cast it out there. Because if you cast it out there and the weight of the line, you got 10 feet of line or something, and it's too much, it can drag that little Zig Rig under, and then it's not doing its job. The other thing about Zig Rigs that's really interesting is that the bites are very subtle. Because the lure is so many feet above the lead, when that fish takes it, he can move a lot in any direction before that lead gets popped off the bottom, and that means that he can thrash around a lot more before a signal is sent back to your rod. Using a very sensitive bite alarm is super important. I use my Delcoms and I get that sensitivity maxed up. I crank it up as high as I can go, and when the fish is on, you'll just hear like a beep 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 beep, and that's it. It's not like the screaming runs that I've typically heard with other types of carp fishing. So a really sensitive bite alarm is a big plus. Zig Rig fishing is one of those things that really blows your mind. It's kind of hard to trust. Bait is easy to trust. Carp eat corn, carp eat boilies. Put bait on bottom, carp eat them, I reel them in. I get that, I know it, I'm used to it. Zig Rigs, there's no flavor. Often I don't even chum with them. If you just see a spot where the fish are rising, just cast it right there and go for it. You know, you can chum, and people will sometimes do those chum spod mixes, really soupy, gooey spod mixes over their Zig Rigs. But I don't really see the point. You know, if you see the carp, cast to them. It's more like fly fishing or lure fishing. You know, they're over there, you cast to it, let it sit. The carp move out of the area, you can't see them anymore. Pull up, cast to where they're at. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it, different strokes for different folks and all that, but it's something that you've got to try it and land some fish on it before you get faith in it. And once you do, it's cool because you realize, oh wow, I can now target fish that weren't eating. I can target fish that aren't on the bottom. I can target fish that won't touch my other gear, and that's cool. That opens up a whole realm of possibilities. I think last year's World Carp Championships, the vast majority of all the carp were caught on Zig Rigs. It's becoming a really popular thing, and the people who are serious carp anglers know how to use Zig Rigs, know when to use Zig Rigs, and they use them a lot. And each year people are finding out these are better and better than we originally realized. They're not a specialty tool, this is an everyday tool. And there's a lot of carp anglers like, I believe it's Alan Blair, who goes out and has a really great piece of advice. He goes, if you're going to start using Zig Rigs, go find some lake that's just crawling with carp. You know, you can't miss. Just tons and tons of small little carp. You can't go wrong. Go out there, fish 3 Zig Rigs, and just say, I'm just going to fish Zig Rigs. Get out there, land some fish, and then you'll just get your confidence up. And that's really good advice. So, you know, go to your local spot that you know you can catch carp. There's tons of carp in there. Throw out a bunch of Zig Rigs, and just give it a serious go and get some faith in the method. But if you can figure out how to use this, it's an absolutely fabulous way to catch fish that are hard to catch, that other people who are bottom fishing can't catch. Using a bobber and a float also work really well, but there's some pros and cons to that as well. It's a little bit more flexible, it's a little bit more versatile, but the biggest problem is that your bobber moves. And carp that are on the surface are often very sensitive. They spook easily. So if you're casting right to them, right on top of them, you'll spook them. So what you want to do is you want to kind of cast to where the carp are going to be and watch them come in. The problem is with a float, if there's any current or wind, the float moves around on you before the carp gets to it. And so you put your float in the right spot, you're waiting for the carp to show up, and they move. You throw right on top of the carp and you spook the carp. The Zig Rig allows you to find a good spot where you know the carp are, cast to it, and wait. And you can just wait for them to show up, and your rig ain't going to move around. So it's a really great method, and it's an awesome way to catch carp in the middle of the day in the winter time when they're suspended off the bottom. Give it a try. Here on Cherry Lakes, those Zig Rigs turned out to be just the ticket. It was a hot summer day in the middle of the day. Fishing was really slow, but I could see tons of carp on the surface. I popped out a Zig Bug from ESP right under the surface, right at the same level the fish were. Look at that, they just inhaled that thing. 18 minutes later, bam, got a nice 21-pound common carp in the net. That thing just inhaled the Zig Rig, and they weren't touching bottom baits at all. I think that was the only one catching anything that time. And middle of the day, hot summer day, you could see the fish right on the surface. Zig Rigs were just the right thing. But they work at night too. I caught some great carp, and I even was catching, here it is, you can see it's pitch black out, and I'm catching a 17-pound common carp on a black piece of foam Zig Bug with no scent. No chum, no scent, just a black piece of foam suspended under the surface in the middle of the night. Worked like a charm. So get out there and try some Zig Rigs. They're a great rig when nothing else is working. And if you like this video, check out some of our other videos, including 15 best carp baits and a great Ponko pack bait that I love to use. And if you like what you see, don't forget to click subscribe and leave any questions in the comment section. Thanks for watching.